Hello again, everyone. It's always nice to be first after lunch. You're a kind of like substitute for a dessert, okay, for whoever missed it. So I'm going to talk to you about the phrase that you will hear from investors, in case you haven't already heard. It's a trendy, catchy phrase, founder superpower. What's your superpower? How many have you heard already that phrase coming from investors? Okay, there will be more of you hearing it. In this presentation, I'm going to use a lot of cliché words, but hopefully I will manage to show these cliché words from a different angle, the angle that hopefully you haven't seen yet. The meta superpower, or a meta thing that founders need to have, can be summarized in one statement: the ability to develop the right product at the right time, in the right place, and communicate to the right audiences. So that's a meta superpower. So today I want to break it down to reverse engineer it, basically. What's behind this phrase? It's interesting. I wasn't given the clicker. Is someone supposed to? Okay, perfect. Which one? Green. Okay. Green button. Yeah, easy. So let's reverse engineer. Let's see what's behind. Let's focus one by one. The right product. You know, product appears to be paramount, right? We need to be able to develop the product. The key here is the right product. Back 30 years ago, when I was founder, when I was starting, developing product wasn't that easy. And I'm talking about hardware products and software, both. The product democratization that happened during the last 30 years is incredible. Now you can create products in basically minutes. And lately you've seen AI, LLM models, and you've seen what it's capable of. So it's easiest time to become a creator, and I use creator in a wide sense, not just creating content, but also product. You know, entrepreneurs are also creators. They just create physical products. But the key here is not to fall in love with the product, but rather to fall in love with the idea or a problem. Because the chances that you will achieve success with the product that is designed from the beginning are very low. Statistics doesn't lie. If you look at the statistics, the chances are lower than 25%. Then your success will be with the original product. So you need to be able to look at the product not with the eye of a parent, but with a little skeptical eye. This is the trickiest part. It's the right time. You probably heard that timing is very important. And timing, the only way to measure timing for the investor is traction. That's why you keep hearing about traction. Do you have traction? And it's easier to raise money when you have traction. But what else goes here? You know, at the end of the day, the right timing means that you need to be able to see the changes that affects your industry earlier than the others. You don't have to be, we humans, we suck at predicting futures. Even those of us who are in that industry, in technology, and are, you know, we're proud that we're seeing future, we cannot predict the future. But the key here is to be a little bit ahead, to have a glimpse, to be able to take a glimpse. And that's why one of the ways to do that is to be so-called homo universalis, or polymath, or generalist. And if you look at the history of mankind, you will see that a lot of entrepreneurs with a big name, they are generalists. They were always generalists. And generalist means, I found that there is a misconception here, a slight misconception. I want to avoid it. Generalist means that you have a lot of different interests. You might not go deep in those interests, but deep enough But then it will be possible for you to see the creative ways to solve the problem. So being generalist helps. What else? Technology, being interested in technology helps. I don't need to tell you that because supposedly it's an event where a lot of you are interested in tech. But being able to know what's latest in tech also helps tremendously. There is a literacy, right? Literacy was very important in humankind, but digital literacy, which basically knowing the technology, knowing how it's affecting your life, is super important now. It's the most powerful tool. Tech is the most powerful tool that was created for creators. There was a famous interview with Steve Jobs. I don't know how many of you remember or know that, where Steve Jobs, he read an article that someone made a research and they measured the physical locomotion, how much energy different animals, different species spend from moving from point A to point B. They measured all the animals, human, and condor won. And human was somewhere like, I don't know, very far away. But someone had a brain to measure a human on a bike, riding a bike. And that human blew up condor, so he came first. The moral of this, and what Steve was saying, is that we humans are tool builders, and technology is one of the tools. And as tool builders, he even used the term bicycle for the mind. That was probably the understatement of the century, if you look at the technology. He was talking about computers back then, understandable. But now, if you look at tech, it's more like a space rocket for the mind. If you look at what AI is capable of now. Well, that's important for timing. The next one is at the right place. This is probably becoming less and less important. Back in the 90s, I had to immigrate to do my startups. I lived outside of Georgia for 20 years. There was no other way. Now, everything is possible. You don't have to immigrate. You will have to leave for a certain amount of time, do some sales, open business offices, but you can do everything. The geography doesn't matter much nowadays. So it's most important. The most important thing, and why it's possible to do this, is because in addition to democratization of the product, the democratization of distribution also happened with the internet. You can get your product into hands of your users, your customers, from any place of the world. It's easier with the software, it's possible with the hardware. It was impossible with the hardware before. Now you can use different ways to get your physical product into hands of your customers. There is no marginal cost of replication, especially when it comes to software and content. So place doesn't matter much. You still need to talk to your customers, be close to your customers, but it can be temporarily. Basically, you need to achieve the level what my friend calls this permissionless leverage. And that means that you don't need other people's time, resources to get your product into hands of the other. That's very easy. So place is becoming less relevant. Communication skills are always relevant. And the meta skill here is writing. Of course, it involves not only writing, speaking, also other skills, but writing, I cannot understate how important is writing. And you as founders, you're experiencing it on a daily basis. Because to apply for the grant, you need to write. To talk to investors, you need to write. There are filters there. What's the reason for the filters? You cannot just call the investor and say, let's beat up. You have to write. You have to learn how to write concisely and coherently. Because one of the main reasons, it helps you to think clearly. Unfortunately, writing is not, in universities and colleges, is not taught this way. Using customer language, because when you talk to customers, it's very important to use their language. And that's very hard to do. You need to learn to use their language, not your language. That's why one of the most difficult things for startups is to come up with a value proposition, because most of the value propositions initially is written in your language, not in the language of your customer. Writing a value proposition, unique selling proposition, headlines, titles, very tough. You need to use customer's language. And for that, you need intimate knowledge of your customer behavior. And to get to that, you also need listening skills. So writing, listening are meta skills here in communication. Listening is not just simply listening. A lot of people, when you talk to them, you notice that the only way they appear to be listening, but they're thinking about what they're going to say next. The real listening skills are rare. The next one is audience, right customer. Now that product creation is very easy, distribution is very easy, what is left? Attracting the customer. Customer acquisition is part that will be more and more important for startup founders in terms of differentiating yourself from others. And what's more important here, then you need to be able to, the more you know, the better you know your customer, the better you are able to find them and reach them. The more you know their language, the better you can reach them, the more efficient. So customer acquisition skills, you need to cut through the noise that customers are facing. We all know because we are all facing the same noise. Channel mastery, right? When you know your customers, next thing you will know the channels, what are the best channels to reach them, what are the most efficient channels. If you master the channel, even one, you get asymmetric advantage over your competitors, over other founders who don't know, who didn't master the channel yet. Let's look at the other things. Let's look at some of the habits, characteristics, which are basically habits that power those superpowers. This is probably the most understated habit. All great founders that are over there, they all have one thing in common. They have great physique. Because you need physique to be able, it's very hard, you know. Startups are hard, not only hardware startups, any startup is hard. And you need to be in a good physical shape to sustain the energy for prolonged periods of times. That was one area that I was neglecting for a certain period of time, but it's very important because otherwise you cannot sustain high energy levels over long periods of times. There is an expression even, entrepreneur's mind, artist's soul, and athlete's body. I'm not saying that you should all get athlete's body and artist's souls, but it's important to have a balance, to understand that all these are important. And focus, another cliche word. But I will hope it's not that easy, right? Everyone keeps telling us you should focus, you should focus, you should focus. But what is more important than focus is ability to understand when you should focus. Focus is like, full screen versus part screen, or zoom in, zoom out. You don't have to be focused all the time. It's dangerous to be focused all the time, because you might miss opportunities, you might miss something. So it's very important, not the focus is important itself, but the ability to go between focus and zoom out, to see the big picture. That's what is important. In the beginning stages, for early entrepreneurs, it's important to find out when they should start focusing, when they should jump in and start working on that idea full-time, and not the whole fact. Because if you do this early, that could be also a problem. This is another cliche, you probably heard this. Confidence comes before ability. I don't know if I should talk a lot about this, but the reason is that if you don't believe in something, you will never be able to achieve this. Never say never, but the chances are low. If you are confident, it's not guaranteed that you will achieve it, but at least confidence always comes first. So you need to be confident, and confidence, important thing here is that confidence should not become too much arrogance. You shouldn't become arrogant. And a bit of realism, which is very important. And for early founders, we need to be optimists, right? We are all optimists, founders. Otherwise, it's impossible. We won't be able to achieve our goals. We need to believe, we need to be optimistic. But the thing is that the optimism plays a bad role at some point, not in all aspects. At some point, you need, when everything goes right, for example, this is a time to be a little pessimistic, to try to see what can go wrong. One way to solve it is to have a player on a team who has the ability to be pessimist, who has the ability to be pessimist, not be a pessimist. There is a difference. Another way is to be yourself, because and that comes with experience. When you make one mistake, second mistake, third mistake, then you automatically, part of you becomes pessimist, and this helps you to not fall in love with your product too much. And critical thinking is also key here. I will give you one example, right? You need to know how media operates. When you hear all the stories about, startup A raising that much money and being super successful, you need to be able to see behind the curtains. Because media loves that stuff, they love that stuff. They know, how clicks work, how interest works, how negativity works in a bad way. So the earlier you can understand these things, the better for you. Self-education. It's easy nowadays to educate yourself. We are talking, like on the previous panels, we talked about rock stars, and education is important, right? How you need accelerators to make sure that the rock stars get access to resources and get access to knowledge. But if you look actually in the real world, everything is available online. You just need to be able to do it without force. There are three ways we typically learn, educate ourselves. The most common way is by doing. That's why the entrepreneurship is best learned by doing. We do it, we make mistakes, we learn. Everyone does that. You don't have competitive edge if you are only learning this way. The second way is by seeing, right? That's why video is better than words, words are better than speech. About 30% of us have the ability to learn from seeing. But the most underrated is probably by hearing. It's very hard, at least statistics say that only 10% of us can learn by listening. So it's important to work on all those skills, to increase those skills, to be the part of the 70, 30, and 10%, to learn from all of this. Because, and this feeds to our polymath thing, right, Homo universalis. The more skills you have, the more verticals you know, more connections you can have, more analogies you see, the easier for you to becomes to learn a new skill. And then it goes in loop. It feeds yourself. You are in a loop of self-learning loop. That's why when you move forward as an entrepreneur, often they are in a super learning mode. That's why they learn so fast. So it's important to understand how you can be in that mode. And lastly, my last point was, we should always try to have fun, because it's very difficult to compete against someone who is playing. You are working, they are playing. How do you compete against that? So what you should be aiming at, you should be playing, and they should be learning. They should be working, sorry. That's a way to outcompete and become rock star, as Pedro mentioned, the word that he used. So try to play versus work. And the only way to do it if you like what you are doing, if you have passion for what you are doing. Thank you very much. I hope it was useful.